Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I hope I'm going live about now. Today is a very, very special day, so I didn't want to miss out on putting out a live stream today, even though I have absolutely zero energy and no business being here. But yesterday something absolutely miraculous happened on my channel, and I sort of missed it because after 93k subscribers, I kind of stopped paying attention to the subscriber count. I was very busy the last couple of weeks, and we hit 100k and 300 or something like that. I was absolutely floored. I posted on Twitter that my mind is just absolutely blown by this. Now, let me briefly check. Yeah, the video seems to be working. Okay. So I have no idea who will tune in and watch. I have seen it time and time again now. You guys watch my videos after the streams, which is absolutely fine. But if you feel like watching live, this is where I'm at my most engaged. This is where I can work with the chat, respond. So if you are part of, let's say, a new 100,000 that wants to join the community, feel free to do so. Comment, like, subscribe, share, all the YouTube jazz, as I call it. Riveting Tail Chap, awesome. You're flying into Texas. Take care, man. I don't know. Can you use internet on planes these days? I always forget. They change like the rules all the time. I remember I once used like internet on the plane right before landing, and a woman next to me was like clutching her pearls, basically as if I was doing some kind of terrorist attack on her. It's like, I've read all the studies, basically doesn't matter. So Tail Chap, I got distracted. Thank you so much for joining. Again, you have been a subscriber, I believe, since like the 13k era, so really an OG here in the chat. We have 7 people watching, which for me is quite good. As I said, most of my videos are watched live afterwards, so that's absolutely fine. But I just wanted to say, like, I don't know, like maybe some of my subscribers are bots because I don't know, like a lot of them come from India, Bangladesh, Pakistan. I have no control, obviously, over those markets. Maybe YouTube, now on my path towards a silver badge, will like delete some subscribers, add some subscribers. To me, it was never about the subscriber count. For me, it was always about meeting people and interacting with people like who absolutely like just improve my own perspective on technology, and I hope to give something of that back. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for that incredible support, and I'll keep that up. If I get the silver badge this month or next month, that will be incredible. If I get it a couple months later because YouTube doesn't like all of you, my dear subscribers, then I'll get it a little later. For me, all that matters is your incredible support. I don't know how to put it into words that we even reached this milestone, and I'll just keep on working to gain your trust, to gain your support, because I know that I'm not entitled to it, and I'll keep providing as high quality content as I can, given the realm also of the content that I'm in. I won't suddenly start creating like MKBHD level production videos, but I will be doing my live streams in this kind of way where I hope that you guys can interact with me, can get something from me, that I can take something from you. As for example, in one of our last chats, I found out about M4 iPad Pro rumors because of some of your chats. So there's a lot going on in my head, but the most important thing is thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. Riveting Tail Chap, you're saying you love my Twitter threads. Awesome. My Twitter threads are about to get much longer because I have canceled my Twitter Blue subscription. So instead of having one tweet with like 2,000 letters, you'll now have to basically go through 8-9 tweets sometimes. Jamie Ibrahim, I'm in this MaxTech video with my M4 iPad Pro theory. Yes, exactly. Jamie, you're also the one who put me onto this theory, and I will be reacting basically as an appetizer for this video to the MaxTech video where they speculate about M4 iPad Pros, Apple's AI stuff. And I will criticize them to a degree, but this is not a breakdown video or what I call like an analysis video, because otherwise I would have put that in the title, right? Mark Tech reacts to MaxTech, something like that. Mark Tech analyzes MaxTech. That's not what this is about. This is me using them as a starting point, giving some fair criticism, and then mainly giving a very brief understanding of how I think the M3, M4 saga will play out. That being said, we have heard basically nothing, even from Mark Gurman. We should be now on the path to maybe getting an iPad Pro announced like next week, maybe the week after, if we really wanted to launch in early May, but we are not. So this has been a somewhat long intro, but it's so important for me to know, for you to know just how much it all means to me. So let's get started with the actual content.
Apple's massive WWDC.
And as always, please let me know if the audio is working all right for you, the video stream is working all right for you. I've tuned some settings and stuff like that. It should all be mostly fine. But I'm always paranoid. You guys know me.
Event is now only about a month and a half away.
Oh yeah, I always forget that. That's a month and a half. Oh my god, time flies. Oh, by the way, guys, cheers. Because I'm thirsty as all hell.
Away, and we've recently been getting some huge revelations in terms of leak updates, and based on everything I'm seeing, this is going to be the biggest WWDC event in years. So in this video,
I actually agree. I think the idea that like iOS 17 is internally like being discussed as like iOS 18 is being discussed as one of the largest iOS upgrades ever. I think that bodes rather well for WWDC, because you cannot forget that it's like usually like big redesigns, yes, they might come a year later to like iPad, but a lot of the very important stuff usually is shared between iPhone, iPad, Mac, because just the frameworks are now the same, right? iOS, iPadOS, macOS, they all use Apple Silicon. It's kind of difficult to not provide some features at the same time unless you like artificially restrain them the way they do like design features, because obviously the iPhone's display size, aspect ratio, it all varies quite from iPad, and then that varies even more so from the Mac.
I'm going to go through and explain exactly which new products and features to expect, as well as the possibility of a huge strategy shift from Apple in terms of their new Apple Silicon chip lineup. First of all, we've been getting tons of leaks pointing to iOS 18, iPadOS 18, and all of the other software features being massive upgrades this year due to the
We will talk about that a little later on
implementation
because Mark Gurman had his Power On report today.
Important to Apple because their stock price has been suffering recently for one major reason. They're falling way behind in terms of AI features, while Nvidia, Google, and other companies seem to be so far ahead. So based on recent leaks, we know that Apple is pushing forward on brand new generative AI features built into a brand new redesign of Siri. Yes, the one we've been waiting on for so many years. And if Apple...
Yeah, so far nothing wrong here. However, it is supposed to be, at least to Mark Gurman, is that Apple will not have like their own, like, at least at launch, their on cloud like large language model. So Siri by itself might not actually be like, it might get a lot of features that you will also get like inside the apps, and Siri will basically be like your voice assistant through getting to those new features. But when it actually comes to like, you know, like OpenAI competition, like ChatGPT, Google Gemini, Meta Llama, or however you properly pronounce LLAMA, Apple will supposedly not have that in terms of like just search the entire web, summarize this stuff for me. Again, we'll get through this, but yeah, Siri might not be as different as some expect. She might just be a lot better at what she currently does.
Pulls this off correctly, it's going to be the best iOS update ever.
It won't. I think this operating system is just way too mature for any kind of new version to be like the best ever, unless it's also like the most refined, the most efficient, the most bug-free. This is what I would call the best, but even like a huge AI-focused release might not satisfy as many people as like I doubt that we'll see like an iOS 7 level redesign, that we'll see like features that rival like when we got Notification Center or when we got Control Center, right? So yeah, again, it's hyperbole. I like Vadim, I like Max. They are very enthusiastic. They're very positive. They're a little bit conspiratorial. I'm a little bit more of a subdued character in that way.
It completely matches iPhone 16 Pro leaks in terms of the new A18 Pro chip coming with dedicated hardware upgrades specific.
This is bullshit, by the way, because there is already dedicated hardware in basically every Apple chip since the A11 on the iPhone 10 when Apple introduced the neural engine. Yes, Apple might build a new neural engine specifically in mind with the algorithms for their new AI stuff, but believe me, it's not that big of a deal. I doubt they will even double performance over A17 Pro's neural engine because it's already so good, not because Apple is lazy. There's also just a limit to like power consumption. Like they could probably like clock the A&E much higher than it already is, but they won't because it just goes against like the efficiency curve, and the neural engine is supposed to be much more efficient at like handling certain tasks than if you push them to like the CPU or the GPU. And if you try to overclock the neural engine like crazy, maybe at that point it starts to make equal sense to use the GPU or the MX accelerators on the CPU.
Specifically for AI. And that brings me to the first product we're expecting at WWDC, which seems like it might actually be the iPad Pro.
And this is where I will have to criticize the guys. We have heard zero rumors about the iPad Pro launching only at WWDC. Again, this is why I put it with a question mark in my title, because to me, like, I want to cover this because it's an interesting rumor, and I want to go through the thought experiment that led them to that. And I understand that the iPad Pro is getting delayed over and over again, like maybe for enough supply for OLED and stuff like that. Maybe Apple will wait all the way until WWDC. Maybe Apple is preparing a new processor, but all that stuff has to be backed up by something. We cannot just say it. And this is, for example, why during my second to last stream, I believe, where I actually covered a lot of what they will cover right now, I was very, very skeptical and very, very like methodical in going through each and every point. And even all that doesn't mean that the original source for it was correct. It could have gotten something wrong, could have gotten some stuff mixed up, could have gotten like deliberately false leaks from Apple to a degree mixed in with a ton of good leaks, right? And also a lot of stuff that was actually in the original leak has not yet been proven correct. For example, we don't know if the next iPad mini is A17 chip based. We don't know that. So yeah, I just wanted to briefly say that when he puts it like at number one, the product that we'll see at WWDC, and it's suddenly the iPad Pro, a product that we're supposed to get in March and now has been delayed to May, and we'll go through his argumentation here.
Yes, I know that recent leaks are pointing to a May release date for the new iPad
Thank you.
Pro, but it seems like it's just getting delayed over and over again because of the brand new dual panel OLED display. We were expecting it in March, then it...
He likes calling it dual panel. That's not quite correct. It's not like it's two layers of like complete like OLED screens. But okay, like I get his points. It's a dual layer screen.
Turned out to be April, now it's May, but who knows, what if we get another delay? Or on the other hand, what if that was Apple's master plan all along to keep delaying?
They like calling things master plans and things genius. It's actually quite endearing because it's not like it's objectively false, right? Apple does have plans, Apple does have strategies. You could maybe even call an individual strategy or like a plan a master plan. But everything seems to be a master plan these days.
Delaying it because of a completely different reason. What if Apple specifically wanted to delay it until WWDC in order to make it the biggest iPad Pro update in years, packing it with AI hardware and features? Because if you think about it,
I mean, again, AI hardware is already in iPads. The M1 has AI hardware, the M2 has AI hardware, the A12X had AI hardware. Like, are we talking about hardware that is finally good enough? Yes, that's a different point, but you're kind of downplaying a lot of achievements by Apple's design teams and Apple's engineers by saying, oh, it's now getting AI. No, it has had AI for years and years.
About it, why would Apple show off all these AI features and then tell you gotta wait until later on in
And this is where it gets a little weird. Please listen.
September to start using them? What if they release a brand new awesome product right out of the get-go like the iPad Pro? And yes,
No, this is the problem. This is never how WWDC, it hasn't been how WWDC works for like a decade or more. Like Apple always, for the intents and purposes of this discussion, presents us a new version of iOS, iPadOS, macOS, a new service, a new application, stuff like that, and then proceeds to launch it gradually after WWDC. Some stuff might come a little earlier, some stuff might come a little later. Usually when we talk about major OS releases, then we are talking about a September or October release. This idea that Apple needs to have a piece of hardware to sell the software that they introduced at WWDC, but it's software that they definitely wouldn't be launching simultaneously with the showing of WWDC. But now they have to have a piece of hardware for software that isn't coming out at that point. Like, the logic does not quite connect there. It does not compute. You know what I mean?
that means that I'm hinting at the new iPad Pro coming with an M4 chip, which doesn't really make sense based on Apple's usual chip timeline, because only 9 months ago is when the M3 chip was released.
I mean, that also doesn't prevent Apple, right? Anybody who has looked at like when the M2 Pro and the M2 Max were introduced, and when Apple then actually proceeded to launch M3, that was actually quite in the 9-month realm. So again, the gap does not actually define Apple's like strategy. It more has to do with like, do the products with the current chip, the current display, the current Wi-Fi modem, etc. actually sell? And would a new product be like logistically smart? Would it actually help us sell more units? Would it actually be a better product that we could like marry to new software? So Apple could sometimes launch like products in like 6-month gaps if they feel like it. It's just that with how technological development happens these days, that's just very unrealistic. But Apple is not bound to like a 12-month schedule, an 18-month schedule, a 24-month schedule. They are just bound by somewhat realistic constraints on how long it actually takes to get to somewhat better hardware.
But we recently got some major iPad Pro leaks that are pointing
And I've covered this, and thanks to you, Jamie. I've covered this in one of my previous streams. We'll briefly break it down together with Max here, together with Vadim actually.
This actually happening. And before we get into that, I want to mention that this would actually be in Apple's best interest because iPad sales have been falling. So the only way to
I've covered this on Twitter in a long thread where in one of his previous videos he said that iPad sales are falling off the cliff, and he pointed to it being 30% lower year on year. But the point is that last year was actually the first year in the entire in over the decade that the iPad has existed where we have not gotten a single new iPad model. We haven't gotten 11th generation cheap iPad. We haven't gotten a next generation iPad mini. We haven't gotten an M2 iPad Air, to which I will cover it a little bit more later down the line. We haven't gotten new iPad Pros, nothing. I apologize. So this idea that like, oh, iPad sales need to be revived with something crazy. No, technically iPad sales just need something new because we have seen like basically nothing.
Really make sure that this upgrade is big enough to make everyone upgrade again is to make it even more tempting than just giving it the same M3 chip that we've already seen in recent Macs.
Again, most people don't think like that. Like most people would just be a little like surprised. They will see like, oh, the iPad Pro has M4 and iPad Air has M2. Where is M3? And then they will look at like the Mac family and be like, oh, okay. Most people just care about getting somewhat relatively new hardware. They don't care if it's M3 or M4, while M4 is not on the market, right? If M4 was already on the market, then yes, some enthusiasts might be like, oh, why should I get an M3 device? But if M4 doesn't yet exist and won't exist for like at least another 3-4 months, you know what I mean?
Instead giving it the M4 chip.
By the way, guys, please let me know if everything works out for you. I take it that audio and video is all right. And as always, please let me know if you agree what I'm saying, if you agree with some of my agreements, some of my criticisms for Max Tech. I just like the interaction whenever there's something spicy, which I know for 100k subscriber special, I would have loved to have something more spicy to cover, but maybe by the time I get my silver play button, why did I call it a badge prior? It doesn't matter. If I get my silver play button, then I hope that for this video I'll get like a live stream going, unbox it, and also cover something spicy.
And where's the evidence for this? Well, Mac Rumors forum user Jamie pointed out some incredible leaks that make perfect sense. First of all, we had a huge leak a couple months back of the chip details of 16 upcoming Apple devices from a private X account.
So, and this is what I want to cover. We have not yet gotten an 11th generation iPad, so we don't know if the A14 rumor is correct. Everything, all that stuff about like a modified iPad or a potential HomePod has not yet been proven correct either. A17 or A17 Pro based iPad mini obviously hasn't happened either. And M2 iPad Air, it just is very likely, right? It still hasn't happened, it still hasn't been proven correct, but yeah, this has always been likely to happen. I would doubt like any rumor that shows like iPad Air not eventually getting M2.
With a proven track record. Everything he shared made complete sense other than one chip identifier for the iPad Pro, which actually pointed to an M4 chip. How? Well, Jamie explained that the leaked chip identifier was T8132. The only problem is that we already know that the M3 chip carries a different identifier of T8122. Which comes after T8112, which represents the M2 chip. So naturally, the new leak number for the iPad Pro perfectly fits into place as representing a brand new unreleased.
So I've covered this. It's It's actually very interesting because if it's correct, like if those like chip numbers that are basically leaked, if they are correct, then yes, it would point towards M4. However, you never really know with stuff that gets leaked like this. There might have been prototypes that have already started testing M4. Doesn't really mean much. There could be some weird, like, even mistake on Apple's side, right? There could be obviously a mistake on the side of the leaker. There could be Apple deliberately leaking some correct information, like I would assume that the iPad mini gets A17 because by the time it gets it, it's very close to the A18. In general, the last time we got an iPad mini with the A15 chip, that was actually a high-end chip by that time, right? There was no A16 or something like that, so it basically got the best chip it could. So I absolutely see how, like, there is potential for there to be an M4 iPad Pro. It's just that, like, it's not really like the most straightforward thing. It also puts into question what is actually TSMC's production schedule look like for N3E, which is what we largely assume for M4 would be built on. Is it actually ready to launch a product in June? Or even early July? Let's say Apple introduces it at WWDC, then makes it like orderable a week later, and then 2 weeks later it gets delivered. So would it be ready by that point? Would TSMC have production for N3E? I have no idea, to be honest, because N3E is just less exciting than N3B was as a first generation 3nm chip, and it's also less exciting than like 2nm, which we have started discussing amongst us enthusiasts basically the moment that 3nm came out. Yeah, I don't know if I don't know if just the logistic for all of this stuff is working out.
M4 chip. Not only that, but 9to5Mac recently found product code identifiers for the iPad Pros themselves, being iPad 16.3, 16.4, 16.5, and 16.6. But check this out because this is very interesting. Apparently, all of the M1 based products, including the iPad
I've gone through the exact same forums, forum posts.
Air, and even the Mac Studio come with a product code name starting with 13. The M2 based products are 14, and the M3 based products like the MacBook Airs and Pros are all 15. But these new iPad identifiers completely skipped 15 and went straight to 16.
Yeah, this is where I would say it gets more interesting because it sort of builds up on that, like, oh, we skipped something. Isn't that interesting, right? Again, I don't know if there's like a golden rule, if Apple really stands by this. It's like, oh, all 14 is M2, all 15 is M3. But it could be, right? And again, I'm not actually trying to, this is not an attack video from me, right? You guys know how I get when I truly disagree with a video, and there is Max Tech stuff that I definitely disagree with. It's just, it's actually very interesting, to the point that even I covered it, and you know that I do have decent standards when it comes to covering certain leaks and rumors. So this is where I get like excited, I guess, because obviously if it gets M4, I kind of would believe we probably wouldn't get an update for the iPad Pro until a 2nm chip is ready, because at that point Apple would be saying, look guys, we skipped a generation, it gets like a super performant screen, maybe it gets like something like Wi-Fi 7 or whatever crazy stuff will be ready for it, right? Apple would basically have everything you would want, like even if it's Wi-Fi 6E, even if it doesn't have like the latest X75 modem and only X70, I think this device could easily keep selling for 18 months or a little more, and then hopefully by that point we would be somewhat close to like 2nm being in enough supply to get us to maybe at that point it would be called an M6 chip, whatever, and then we would basically create a rule that the iPad skip a generation of M series processors. It's all crazy because for now we have just assumed like, and honestly, for the most part, we should still assume that like iPad Pro gets like the latest Apple Silicon chip, then moves on to the next one, then iPad Air follows with the last generation chip, and then so and so on it goes. But we have had this wrench basically thrown into this mess. And yeah, so basically from the chip identifier to the iPad identifier itself, we are getting some very interesting speculation here. And again, thank you again to Jamie, who is a big supporter of this channel, who has brought that to my attention. And now Max Tech is covering it also in a lot of detail. I'm very happy about that, because even if it's not correct, right, I still like to have this information out there to a wide array of people, so the people can discuss it among themselves, right? You can actually look at the comments, and the highest like comment on Max Tech videos is always like, in the next video I was wrong, because that's kind of how they roll, right? It's just very fascinating, because obviously like this information has been already out for a little bit. Max Tech is just like regurgitating it, similar to how I did it,
which is a huge hint at the M4 chip. So even though it goes against all common sense and current leaks, we have two separate internal leaked identifiers.
But at that point, Apple would have to basically make sure, if they launch an M4, right, with an iPad Pro, they would basically have to explain very, very carefully what works on what device. Now, they could make the argument that the iPhone 15 Pro and 15 Pro Max still get all or most AI features, because the A17 Pro has a newer neural engine than the M3. But then the question starts like, guys, you just launched the M3 MacBook Pro, just launched the MacBook Air based on M3 chips. How fair is it to exclude especially chips like the M3 Pro, the M3 Max, that don't just have a decent neural engine by all accounts, but also have mighty powerful GPUs? My image was just having some issues on my iPad. I don't know if that's like a problem on my end, or like on my upload end, or on the download end on my iPad. But yeah, please let me know if you have some video streaming issues with the stream.
Pointing to the M4 chip.
Yeah, so what I was gonna say, like, it would be a very, very complicated release for Apple to say, look, you will need this just released iPad for those features on iPad, because iPads also don't have M3 chips. Beyond, well, this iPad has a newer chip than M3, but then iPad Air is getting M2. So if you get the iPad Air, you are not getting most of the AI stuff, right? At least according to what Vadim is saying. But then the M3 Max gets some of those features, but not maybe all of them. So you should probably wait until M4 Max, but we are just not announcing any of them today at WWDC. But since all those features will not launch until September or October anyway, you might as well just wait until then and get like an M4 Mac. I don't know. And then the question would be like, well, the A17 Pro has a newer neural engine than like the M3 technically, but what does that mean when it comes to like the A18 chip, right? Will there be features exclusive for that? Will even some features that are announced at WWDC maybe not show up on the iPhone 15 Pro? I think that would be just too confusing. Apple is far better off, I think, introducing features that work offline and very well on M3 chips and A17 Pro chips. At WWDC, basically all features they show off work on M3 chips and an A17 Pro. Whatever M3 might lack in raw neural engine performance, it makes up with graphics performance over over the A17 Pro, and also has like more performance cores, which all have their own AMX accelerators. And then on top of that, Apple could then in September or October show off new iPhones with the A18 Pro chip, new Macs with M4 chips, and say that these devices get like 1 or 2 extra exclusive stuff. But everything that was shown at WWDC has to work with hardware that already exists in some form. At least that has been mostly Apple's MO. I don't know if they will spontaneously change it. It sounds a little bit too anti-consumer, not because consumers will be cheated by it, but because it's just too much, basically like time from thinking, right? Yeah, you have to invest a lot more time to research then what works on what device, and that happens from time to time, but it all happens with like older hardware. Apple doesn't announce features and say like, well, in 3 months we'll have hardware ready. That's not how Apple really does things.
Because this video is focused on what to expect from WWDC, I'm gonna make another video later this month that goes way into all of the details of the iPad Pros and adding even more.
I really hope that that won't be necessary at that point. I would just love to actually see the iPad Pro and be done with it. I'm not getting the first gen OLED iPad Pro. I'm still like, similar to how I didn't get the 2018 iPad Pro with ProMotion, I waited until something even more powerful was ready because I was so happy with like my original A9X 12.9-inch iPad Pro. So I got the M1 with mini LED, with 5G, Wi-Fi 6, basically a lot of good stuff that actually benefits me a lot for my day-to-day usage. And with OLED, I'm just a little worried that some of the decisions, like making it like razor thin, might backfire a little, and we'll see like Apple like go back on them a little bit, as they have done. Even like the mini LED iPad Pros have gotten a little thicker to incorporate mini LED. Maybe Apple will like increase battery size on the second generation OLED iPad Pro or something like that. Maybe like an M2 chip will be just and a 2 nanometer chip will be so much more efficient in 2 years that it will basically laugh at all the 3 nanometer stuff we have right now, and at that point just the advantages in having a cooler, longer lasting device will make up for like not having OLED for like 1.5 years. So I'm basically saying I'm just trying to get the most out of my mini LED M1 iPad Pro.
More evidence for why this could make sense. But with that said, let's move on to the next product we could expect at WWDC. And that is, of course, the Mac Studio. Because if Apple does truly release the M4 chip right away as a shocker to everyone.
Wait, but that would mean they would have to release the M4 Max simultaneous. N3E baby is not ready for that. No. I thought we would have like a discussion about like a limited release for M4 on just iPad Pro, but now we are talking about having to have like M4 Max design at the ready. That's hyper aggressive.
One at WWDC, then it could make sense to release at least one Mac alongside that, which could be...
Yeah, but that sounds it's far easier said than done, right? It's not like they launch like an iPad because they just feel like it, or a Mac because they just feel like it. They launch it because they actually have some parts ready. If we would actually get a Mac Studio at WWDC, it would probably be an M3 Max, and like if M3 Ultra exists, which is unlikely at this point, then it would be an M3 Max and an M3 Ultra Mac Studio. But from everything we see, it's very likely that, like according to Mark Gurman, Mac Studio is getting updated like what next, like is somewhere in this first half of the next year, like spring to summer, right? And then like the Mac Pro would be like happening after that, or maybe simultaneously, depending on if it has like an exclusive chip or not. But this is very far-fetched, Vadim, sorry.
the Mac Studio because we did get leaks saying that we should expect the Mac Studio in the middle of 2024, which perfectly matches a WWDC release. And the major reason for why this could happen is because we also got a leak from TrendForce saying that the new chip for the Mac Studio was actually being built using TSMC's new N3E.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's ready for WWDC. You cannot just combine this random TrendForce rumor with like the discussion about what is happening in an event 1.5 months from now.
Process node, which is completely different than the N3B node.
That is not true. That's not what incompatible means. N3E is in many ways similar to N3B. It's a little less complicated. It uses fewer UV layers, but the actual like design process, like the actual like chip in the end is not that dissimilar if it's designed on N3B or N3E. It's just you have to invest into proper porting, like you would port from like 7 nanometer to 5 nanometer, while if you're moving from 7 nanometer to N7 plus, then you don't really have to redesign the chip. You just have to make sure that the die size changes that come from the better node don't necessarily like degrade your ability to like even connect the chip to the motherboard, but that it's not as dramatic as he makes it out to be.
Which is on all of the M3 chip Macs. So if Apple truly did make the chip on N3E, it would only make sense if it's an
the M4 Max chip sooner rather than later, perhaps in late 2024. So even the rumor he is covering here does not actually agree with what he's saying.
M4 family chip. So in that case, why would Apple completely skip M3 Ultra and go to M4? Well, if they
Well, I would say they probably expected like the yields for N3B to be relatively bad, the pricing to be even worse. So they probably said, well, in a year we will have access to N3 anyway. At that point, we might just release the entire M4 family, like not even wait for the Ultra chips. Or we'll do like a very gradual rollout. We might reduce prices on the M2 stuff that is already out. There are a ton of reasons.
Release the M4 chip at WWDC, they could also do the M4 Ultra at the same time and completely reverse their strategy from making the highest end Macs first with the
But that is not a strategy in of itself. It has to do a lot with like the actual like how you design the chips, because Apple designs like their new cores, the new PCIe lanes, whatever else basically powers a new processor, and it just makes a lot more sense to put it into the smallest chip, because this is where you will encounter the least amount of potential issues, and then you gradually build up to an M3, to a Pro chip, a Max chip, an Ultra chip. You see if there are any inherent scaling issues to the new architecture stuff that you have created. Apple has already like dramatically increased the speed by which they roll out new processors, right? M3, M3 Pro, M3 Max all launching basically simultaneously was a huge W for them. That's not something a lot of companies could manage. And this happening, by the way, despite M3 Pro and M3 Max being on different dies, while previously M3 Pro was just a very, very much cut down version. Previously M2 Pro and M1 Pro were like very, very much cut down versions of their Max counterparts. M3 Pro and M3 Max are just very different chips. This is why they have like different E-core counts. This is why they have like somewhat different bandwidth configurations, even if you account for like the different count in GPU compute units. So yeah, like I don't want to attack him. I see the enthusiasm. I would love, obviously, to get like a new chip every 3 months if that was possible, but unfortunately it's not.
highest profit margins and the lower sale numbers, and then later pushed out the lower end MacBooks like the MacBook Pros, and then finally the MacBook Air in the spring of 2025. So that way they're making the most amount of money first and releasing the consumer desktops and laptops much later. This of course is all speculation based on the internal.
I mean, it wouldn't even be much later, right? At that point, if you have an M4 iPad Pro, you kind of have to launch an M4 MacBook Pro at least at the most 3 months later. It just wouldn't otherwise make sense. It would confuse people.
Internal chip identifier leaks and the N3E node, but that's the only way to make sense of all of this. And now moving on to the third major product that
It's not. You can also believe that some rumors are not correct. We have had that happen time and time again. You don't have to rationalize every rumor that exists out there. You also can believe that even if some rumors were originally correct, you could argue that maybe they come from such outdated internal data, maybe they come even from data that was at TSMC instead of Apple, and they just had discussions. You don't have to believe every rumor to then make sense of the broader story. That's just not how the world works.
we could get at WWDC that could
Okay, this will
be
nicely
the iPad Air.
blend into my first story of the day. And I'll actually I think I'll cover this right away because this is super duper interesting, and this is the 12.9-inch iPad Air will use same display technology as the current larger iPad Pro. So we're talking about like the current 12.9-inch iPad Pro that has what? Yes, a mini LED screen. And actually a fantastic mini LED screen with one of the highest local dimming backlight zones density ever in a consumer mini LED product. It's just right now that products are starting to catch up with what Apple has been delivering since the 2021 iPad Pro with the M1 chip. It's absolutely phenomenal, and this is coming from Ross Young. And if you know who Ross Young is a display supply chain analyst with an almost 100% track record. Now his track record has recently been somewhat hurt by the non-existence of the iMac, for example, that he has been predicting, but then he has also been predicting its delays. So he has been improving upon his worst leaks himself, and his best leaks obviously have been basically 100% correct. Whenever he predicts something gets like promotion or a brand new display type or a slightly different display size, we'll see if his predictions on slightly larger iPhone 16 Pro and 16 Pro Max display sizes will be correct. We'll yet have to see if the new iPads that have OLED will have slightly larger screens. So there is still a lot that we have to see from him, but genuinely Ross Young is somebody who I would pretty much always cover. This is how I used to treat Min-Chi Kuo before he became somewhat independent and started posting a lot of weird stuff. But Ross Young basically saying that Apple will just, for the most part, reuse the 12.9-inch panel that they have on the current iPad Pro, which is true for the iPad Pro with M1 and iPad Pro with M2, and just give it to the larger iPad Air. As you have heard from other leaks and rumors and from this channel, Apple supposedly is going with a 2 screen size approach for the iPad Air, similar to what they do with the iPad Pro. And yeah, it seems like that a larger iPad is getting a much better screen than we anticipated. Now, we don't know if that also means ProMotion or not, right? Mini LED is obviously good for high dynamic range, for high peak brightness. It's even actually good for efficiency because some parts of the screen can just stay black. But what's very interesting is that the current iPad Pros and the last generation iPad Pros and the generation of iPad Pros before them have had now ProMotion for a while, which is their ability to go up to 120 Hz and have variable refresh rates. This is We don't know if Apple might give it mini LED and just basically clock it to 60 hertz, don't give it ProMotion abilities, or if it's full out all the functionality that you currently have in like in the current generation iPad Pro. We don't know. We don't know if that would mean that the smaller iPad Pro gets then the exact same panel as the current iPad Pro, 11-inch iPad Pro, which would mean it would get like ProMotion but not mini LED. So that's a very, very interesting rumor. Jamie, you're saying his track record, by which I assume you mean Ross Young, has definitely fallen recently. He said that the MacBook Air would have a 13.4-inch OLED panel. Yeah, but he also like revised some of that stuff, right? He said that like I remember a while back he basically said that, and I believe he said that about the iPad Air as well, but I definitely remember him saying it about the MacBook Air, which is that they would be the first products to actually, like large Apple products, to get OLED, right? So, and people were confused. Why would like the MacBook Pro not get OLED when the MacBook Air gets it, right? And why, especially for the iPad Air, which like the iPad Air has always significantly lagged behind the iPad Pro. Why would it suddenly get the technology like OLED before the Pro, especially if that technology is like supply constrained? Why would you give it to the device that actually sells better and would suffer huge logistical challenges suddenly? So yeah, I remember, again, I'm saying Ross Young is not perfect. There was an era when Min-Chi Kuo was not perfect, but again, he would provide a lot of context, he would provide a lot of information, he would correct himself, and now he's almost a joke, right? And Ross Young is definitely far away from turning into a joke, but he's also past his like, oh yeah, I'm basically tech Jesus, like display tech Jesus, I know it all, right? Yeah, we are unfortunately past that, so it could be wrong, right? It could be, for whatever reason, maybe Apple has just like ordered new mini LED screens, right? Maybe they plan on producing the M2 version of the iPad Pro for longer or something like that. Or maybe it was a rumor, or maybe it was a discussion between Apple and like suppliers, but then it didn't pan out, and he does somehow miss that part. So yeah, I'm not saying he's perfect. I'm not saying you should believe it, but I just wanted to say like this is a very interesting rumor because it would give the iPad Air like somewhat more similarities to the Pro, to the current generation Pro. But then in absence of ProMotion at that point would feel even more insulting, right? Because, oh, you obviously took the same panel, but you just downclocked it a little again, you know? And let's see what Vadim has to say about it.
Seeing as it keeps getting delayed, and Apple might want to push it out at the same time as the iPad Pros as a cheaper option. And
this would actually be, in my opinion, a good point if the mini LED rumor is actually true, right? Because if Apple launches 2 new iPad Airs with an M2 chip, and they also like the larger one has like mini LED, but all they lack is ProMotion, people would just look at the lineup with a lot of confusion. So if you have like a really like breakthrough technology, at least for a device at that price point, you better then have something newer and better on the iPad Pro, right? And in that case, it would be double layer OLED. It would be the presence of ProMotion versus the non-presence of ProMotion. So it would obviously be a lot better still.
We recently just found out that it could actually have the same mini LED display as the 12.9-inch iPad Pro. And
very, very much him just covering the exact same stuff.
iPad Air, while the regular, smaller 10.9-inch model could get the same LCD display. And what that means is that Apple could be planning to make it a lot more expensive. Maybe $900 for this 12.9.
Well, the current iPad Pro, iPad Air is $600. My speculation is it will stay $600 and get like 128 gigabytes of base storage. My speculation is $800 for the iPad Pro. Maybe $900 if. What would change for that? Like, because with 128 gigabytes, even that would still be, well, it would be a lot cheaper than the iPad Pro is now, but that would put it outside the range of a lot of people, and you need to make it a little cheaper so then people are more enticed to still spend money on the Apple Pencil, on the Magic Keyboard. You don't want people to like go with some third-party cheaper alternative or buy the cheaper USB-C Apple Pencil. You want them to get like the best thing possible.
9-inch size compared to about $700 for the smaller size.
I mean, so he basically predicts $100 price increase in a way that I don't. At least not for now, because I haven't heard anything that would put it in that realm. If it gets promotion and higher base storage, I would believe that the iPad Air goes from $600 to $700, yes. If it does not get promotion and only 128 gigabytes, I would speculate it then stays at $600, unless the inflation pressure is really so high that Apple would want to increase pricing. But now we're too far away from like that original $499 iPad price point, right? A price point that Apple was like super duper proud of for years and years. Like $699 is noticeably different than $499, while $599 is just close enough in my opinion, especially after over a decade.
Said, what if they give it the M3 chip to keep it competitive and better than the other iPads?
No, that is bullshit, because that just doesn't make sense at that point. You are now giving it a chip that probably is in some ways as expensive or more than the M4. You have to understand why Apple gives the iPad Air like a generation older chip. It's not just logistics and stuff like that. It also comes down to price. Now, sometimes prices go down on older nodes, yes, but it also just happens that the iPad Pro eventually switches to a newer chip, which usually with every generation gets like a little bit more expensive. Like the Note is more expensive, or the chip is a little larger, and something like that. So no, there's, in my opinion, zero chance that the iPad Air would get like M3, and part of that goes actually against his own reporting. Because in the beginning of the video, he showed a rumor that said like iPad Air is getting M2. So why would he suddenly believe the part that shows iPad Pro getting M4, but not the part about iPad Air getting M2, right? It's very contradictory. It's basically like best case scenario, and that just doesn't happen, right? That's fantastical. That's not how supply chains work.
While the iPad Pro has the M4. Now that doesn't really make that much sense due to the leaks pointing to an M2 chip.
Okay, thank you.
But we're gonna have to wait and see. But other than that, we can expect Apple to release a lot of awesome new software features and updates, especially with AI being put.
Okay, I think we can end this and then can move on to the next rumor. I do want to keep this video below 1.5 hours, so I apologize for moving in a little more quickly on than I usually do, but I do have something to do after 8 p.m. So, and this is where we actually get today's Power On newsletter from Mark Gurman. It's not a very detailed report. Thank you, Mark Gurman. But yeah, it is what it is. It's pretty up to par with what we are getting usually with Mark Gurman these days. And he's talking about on-device large language models. And this, I put that basically in my title, that Apple would have offline AI for iOS 18. And this is obviously interesting. Well, large language models goes beyond saying at this point. It's basically what powers the next wave of AI. It basically takes a lot of information, a lot of text primarily, depending on the task you want to train your AI for, and then it just tries to learn how do people talk, how is certain information interpreted, and stuff like that, right? And supposedly Apple has its own large language model. Now, we have heard about that for a while. I believe the rumor was referring to it called Ajax or something like that. And the interesting part is that even though we usually associate large language models with stuff like ChatGPT or Google Gemini, and that stuff is like running from the cloud, technically you can scale them down, you can compress them a lot, and you can make them run offline on your device. Now, that will be less powerful, less like dramatic maybe even, and less powered by the most current information than a cloud large language model, but Mark Gurman does discuss here some of the benefits that Apple would have. So the company is exploring a few next big thing projects. So there are augmented reality spectacles in the works, personal robots. I believe absolutely in augmented reality spectacles at some point of like 10-year as like an Apple Vision Pro 10, right? Similar to how the iPhone 10 was a huge redesign. So that's not coming anytime soon. Personal robots, again, it depends on the competition. We see that with technology like EV, right, where a lot of people believe that like electric vehicles would have like 40% profit margins because they're just so attractive, because they're so much cheaper to use long term than internal combustion engine vehicles, right? But then the second you actually introduce a lot of competition to the market, we see like Tesla's margins collapse into the 5 to 7% range. And I do believe that a similar thing will happen with like the build up to robots. For one, it's very questionable how functional robots will actually be for like the mass audience. And for large factories, it's arguably better to just build specialized equipment than like humanoid robots. But also, once you have like Boston Dynamics competing with like a half a dozen Chinese companies and maybe Tesla's whatever they call him, Optimus, right? At that point, I do believe that Apple would just look at the market and say like, you know what, we don't need to enter another market that has like 4 to 5% profit margins, that potentially has like huge issues, similar to how AI has been like very, very positive for like the companies and their stock. But when you actually ask people like, how much has AI benefited your workflow and stuff like that, you'll find that people are not that enthusiastic. Similar to like how NFTs were like, there are a ton of enthusiasts there, but even like an infinite amount more of just people who are highly skeptical. Like, I'm really believe that Apple should work on stuff like personal robots, maybe to even just utilize them at some point in their own factories or like Foxconn's factories and stuff like that. But I highly doubt they will actually make a personal robot. But that's neither here nor there. That's Mark Gurman basically injecting some older rumors into the stuff he's covering. But even higher stakes endeavor will be its push into more advanced AI later this year. This is an area where Apple is chasing companies like OpenAI and Alphabet Inc.'s Google. Who the F calls it Alphabet Inc.'s Google? It's like it's like calling something Meta Inc.'s Facebook. It's so stupid. And its initial AI features probably won't be superior to those of its rivals. But, and I've actually covered this, I believe, in my last stream, where somebody has asked me like, what do I believe will be the main benefits of Apple's like push for AI? And Mark Gurman calls them a potential game changer here. Apple is working on a large language model, and they are working on making it entirely on-device based. That means the tech is powered by the processors inside iPhone, iPad, Mac, right again. The iPhone is not the only device that has a neural engine. The upshot, Apple's AI tools may be a little bit less powerful because simply there's less data to work with, right? But they could fill in the gaps by teaming up with Google and other AI providers. I've covered those rumors too, about them potentially partnering with like Microsoft's Copilot or Google's Gemini stuff, or even like Weibo in China, who has like their own AI, cloud-based AI with a powerful, like more Chinese-focused LLM, which also Chinese-focused doesn't just mean Chinese language, it also means it's in compliance with the CCP, unfortunately. But he says it will make responses far quicker. We've actually seen that when Siri went to on-device processing for certain voice inputs, they're like lightning quick. Like setting an alarm or something like that on Siri is basically instantaneous. While if you've seen my coverage and the coverage of numerous reviewers on YouTube about the Humane AI pin, if you cannot even process like the spoken words on device and you have to upload that to the cloud, wait then to download it, and everything else in between, it just becomes far quicker if you can actually handle it on device with a good processor. It will also make it easier for Apple to maintain privacy, and Apple will market it as the most private and secure AI out there, therefore, which I've also said that this should be a point where Apple can differentiate itself. Apple also will take a bit of differentiating marketing message rather than touting the power of chatbots, because as I said before, this will not be a chatbot focused like endeavor. This will be about enhancing existing and new iOS features, Apple apps features, even giving the power to like third-party applications. It will not be about generative AI in the same way that like, generate me an image of like a pretty girl standing on the beach, like all the crap ads that you see on Twitter these days. This is not like, even if Apple actually puts out eventually like a chatbot or like a generative AI tool, even similar to like what Photoshop is like delivering, I don't think that will ever be the focus, and I don't think that those features will ever be as comprehensive as at any given time as like the competition, because even if Apple had the capabilities, I just don't think they're interested in that. I don't think they want to buy like 1 million H100 GPUs from Nvidia for all that stuff. Like Facebook currently just put out Llama 3, which is like the best like open source large language model out there. Google Gemini is by all accounts crap, but then Google Gemini 1.5 Pro is okay, and then ChatGPT 4.5 is still by many metrics the best, but everyone is waiting to see if ChatGPT 5 is actually a large leap forward or only an incremental improvement. And then we have like all those tools that are based on those LLMs, including stuff like Sora from OpenAI, which is like a video generating feature. So again, there is so much to compete with that I believe Apple could just say, look, if you're like a content creator and you want to subscribe to Sora or whatever, feel free to do so. Here we have like an API to maybe easily integrate those tools. If you're subscribing, maybe we'll like open that up to the App Store, and then those developers have to pay us a 15 or 30% commission. And I think that Apple will feel far more comfortable in just making their own AI stuff about stuff that happens on device. At least that's my theory, and it happens to be currently backed up by Mark Gurman. We should get the full details at company's Worldwide Developers Conference. Yes. So Apple plans to show how the tech can help people in their daily lives. It's very much an Apple pitch. You know how Steve Jobs used to talk about Apple being at the intersection of like technology and liberal arts. I doubt that Apple would want to put out generative AI tools that are largely despised by a lot of like the creative community. Apple will not come out against them, similar to how they didn't come out against NFTs or crypto, but people also were speculating, well, will Apple put out their own like Dogecoin competitor or whatever, their own Bitcoin competitor, and they never did. Will Apple adopt NFTs across like their purchases? No, they didn't. And that craze came and the craze went, and Nvidia just on Friday dropped 10% of their stock price. So Apple is careful in not jumping head first, because if Apple invests like $5 billion into AI and basically gets nothing back, that would be a little weird, while focusing on AI that they could leverage actually long term because it's on device based. I think this will be far better for them. So this basically concludes all the serious stuff, and now we get to some last and very good news. At least if it's actually news and not a sketchy leak or rumor, and that is that Apple reportedly is stopping the production of FineWoven accessories. Now, this has actually been one of my first videos on my channel that actually gained some traction. That is me unboxing like Apple's FineWoven case for the iPhone 15 Pro Max and comparing it to leather accessories that I had for like the iPhone 10 and still stuff like that, and I compared it to cases I had for my 13 Pro Max. I tried to get it wet. I don't know where my FineWoven case is anymore, which should say a lot about how bad it is. I basically use the Pitaka case for my 15 Pro Max, and then I have like a clear case from Apple. And yeah, there's a good reason for that. Now, this is coming from Kosutami on X. This is the original tweet saying, FineWoven has gone since its durability was bad. All the production line has stopped and was removed. Apple will move to another material again, but not leather. This was supposedly Apple will create some other leather alternative. Maybe they will even call it FineWoven again, but it seems like for now they might be stopping production and just selling out of whatever inventory they have, right? It's very important. Stopping production does not mean that Apple will have like no leather accessory, no FineWoven accessories to sell you. By all accounts, like even on Amazon, you can buy one very easily at a pretty low price because there's very little demand for it. And yeah, so that like it's such a shame because Apple had such good leather accessories, and I'm not even advocating for like the return of leather. There are plenty of like alternative companies that make like leather accessories, but it's just such a shame just how bad it turned out to be. So yeah, some people have asked whether that means that Apple will like not sell anything, whether they will like stop the FineWoven name. I don't know. Like in my opinion, it would just make sense to say like this is FineWoven 2. It fixes the durability issues. It has a slightly different grippy feel to it. And that's it, right? Maybe they will come up with a new name, but whenever you change names very quickly, it just shows that you are a little desperate. But I also don't want Apple to like find themselves in like a magic, what's it called? Magic? No, with the butterfly keyboard situation, right? Where they just try to slightly change that existing design and it kept breaking again and again and again. So if this is fundamentally like a broken solution, then I would want Apple to find really a different new one, right? I would want them to put out something that is far, far better than what this is. And I actually believe in Apple. Like I believe like this is a leather like link bracelet, or what is it called? That magnetic bracelet. The names for Apple's like Apple Watch bands are a little goofy. So yeah, that's basically the leather one with a lot of magnets that interconnect with each other. And that one is fantastic. And I'll probably be using it for at least another year. And I hope it doesn't wear out too soon. But yeah, if you actually saw that from the original tweet, you can see those same that same design, but it's now based on FineWoven, and they look bad, and they look bad very, very quickly. So if whenever Apple puts out a new case thing, right? If they make like a new material, or even just a FineWoven 2, you can absolutely expect me to buy one and compare it live and long term. It actually didn't take me like long term stuff to find out just how bad FineWoven is. It took me like a week to know that it's very, very difficult to clean properly and maintain even its feel. But yeah, if Apple says something is designed now to be more durable, something is designed to be like a better feeling, then yes, I will absolutely give it a chance. And I hope that at that point, if the market really loses enthusiasm, they should maybe even like rethink of like the $59 price point, and maybe just put it at an even 50 for like at least a generation. And then if the consumers are fine again with FineWoven, you can then increase prices like with the release of iPhone 17 or something like that. But I believe this is a good rumor, because I like it when Apple learns, and it's not like I'm against Apple trying something new, and sometimes trying something new will result in them failing. But yeah, obviously when you have proven to have failed, you should move on, you should try to find a solution. And I just noticed that I don't actually need my earpods. Yeah, so to me, this is actually good news, because I would have been more worried if Apple just stuck with it no matter what. And the idea that it actually says like pretty much that they will be moving on to another material, and that it's still like a leather alternative, which I'm looking forward to. I appreciate like the pro-environmental nature of moving away from leather, though I have also argued that if you can integrate like leather production in like proper, like basically like animal farming, and basically every animal that you take its leather from also happens to get eaten, then I don't have much of a problem with leather. But yeah, let's just see. Maybe Apple can come up with something that is even better for the environment, because especially with all that stuff potentially landing up in the landfill because people hating it, it obviously does not look like a very big benefit for the environment. And with that, I would like to finish the video. It's been an hour and 15 minutes. I, for now, still have my voice, which I didn't expect to keep. We've covered quite a little bit, everything from like what new iPad Airs and new iPad Pros would have, like from processors, displays, and AI functionality. And with AI functionality, we've talked about like, will it be cloud-based? Will it be on-device based? What will Apple use to advertise it? And we even have like some obscure rumors, like Apple potentially like hardcore redesigning the macOS calculator app, maybe even building some AI features into it. So there is a lot that I'll be looking forward to. As Vadim at MaxTech said, it's only 1.5 months till WWDC, and I'll definitely be covering as much of that as possible. And we finished it with some rumors about that a bad Apple product is not getting the support, or it's losing Apple's trust, which is always good, because whenever Apple moves away quickly from something bad, that can just result in us hopefully getting something better. I do have to leave now. I want to say again, thank you so much for the 100k subscribers. We'll keep seeing how that number develops, how much, depending also how much videos I can put out, depending on like where you guys tune in from. I've recently gotten more followers from like America and Canada, so we are not as heavily India, Bangladesh and Pakistan based as we used to be, but I'll keep finding also like the optimal time for when I actually do my streams. Maybe I'll try to do a couple of more like pre-recorded videos, because I also want people who like click on my channel to not see just months old videos at the top. But yeah, there is a lot that I just want to do still more with this channel, and I'll be improving it in the next 2 months, also with some new technology. Again, some of it is still up in the air, so I'll let you know how that develops. And beyond all of that, again, just huge thank you, completely blown mind on the incredible support. Thank you all for tuning in today during my other videos, watching them afterwards, sharing them, commenting on them, whatever you feel like doing. And if you feel like supporting this channel, I've already said, comment, subscribe, like, share. And if you feel like supporting this channel more directly, you can send, while I'm live, a super chat or a super sticker. And if you find this video already on the channel, you can just send a super thanks. And if you feel like supporting me in the long term, you can find my Patreon link in the description of this channel. So this has been a phenomenal ride. It's been basically a full year of putting out content for this channel, even as a hobby, even with a lot of long gaps. And it's incredibly rewarding to see your support, to see you guys tuning in. I hope to keep gaining more of your trust, more of your support. Please let me know what I can do to do that. Let me know what you would like to see me cover next, what you would like to see me cover differently maybe. And as always, I'm open to some constructive criticism. Please be nice. For today, I'm just celebrating the 100K, but at any other day, except for my birthday and Christmas and the start of the holidays and the start of the summer, you can give me constructive criticism. No, just kidding. You can give me constructive criticism whenever you feel like. I've always appreciated it. I hope to grow with it, and I hope to help you by providing you also with some insight that you might not have had, maybe that some other YouTubers have not provided, and we'll keep evolving together. Thank you guys so much. See you next time. This is Mark Tech, tuning out.